Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us for this Film Hub NI podcast. Moving Pictures Program is the full title, and we're focusing today on marketing and audience development for online screenings. These podcasts are supporting independent exhibitors across the UK and Ireland to engage positively with online opportunities and what challenges can be met, and also what the future of a hybrid world might look like. Sarah, hello.
Hello, Hugh. How are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm not too bad. As Hugh said, this podcast episode is part of a series, which is called the Moving Pictures Podcast Series, which is quite handy. Because we're talking for temporarily about bringing the big screen to the small screen and what that means for exhibitors. The podcast series covers a load of different topics from access to platforms to programming. You can check out each one individually, standalone, or you can listen to the whole series, which are available on the Film Hub website and on Spotify and iTunes, the usual platforms. They are also available on YouTube, and they will be captioned there for anybody who just needs that for them to get involved. We should say a big thank you to the funders and supporters of this podcast series, Northern Ireland Screen, through Department for Communities, who have been really helpful in helping us get the word out to exhibitors. And enjoy them.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you as ever for thanking the sponsors. Even more important, the sponsors are our guests today. And we're delighted to be joined by Ellen Reay. Hello, Ellen.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Ellen is the marketing coordinator at the Queen's Film Theatre. And also Jo Taylor-Hitchinson. Hello, Jo. How are you?
Hello, lovely to be here.
We're all in sunny Northern Ireland. Where are you today?
I'm in Chesington, not in the world of adventures, but
Hello.
not far from it.
You've both been very busy during this whole period of the pandemic, really since last March, pivoting, changing, analysing new ways of working, and so on. So it might be useful for listeners just if you could just give us a kind of rough outline of what the last year has been like in your particular roles, one as venue and one as a freelance marketer. Jo, since you're the furthest away, do you want to go first?
Yeah, for sure. So it's been I believe the phrase is roller coaster. It's been like that for the past it's coming up for 12 months now. So I am a full-time freelancer. One of the projects I work on, which I'm going to talk about a bit more, is I work with Bird's Eye View on their Reclaim the Frame programme as their campaign manager. But also I work on a number of other freelance projects, and not unsurprisingly, and I'm sure Ellen had the same thing, as soon as cinemas closed, things just stopped. Distributors were obviously being very cautious about whether they were going to release films digitally, and that also opens up possibilities, but also creates challenges and adventures for exhibitors and freelancers and how they navigate and work that as well. But kind of primarily the past year has been working with Reclaim the Frame on really kind of building up their online offering, which they've been doing since within about, I think, 2 weeks of lockdown happening, we had our first event.
Really? 2 weeks?
Yeah, it wasn't long off. I was trying to think back to it, and we did something for Here for Life, and then we did like a Mother's Day one, but we had a couple of private events to start with, just to kind of feel out how things worked. Because everyone was like, oh, there's Zoom, there's this, there's that. And you started to see kind of some horror stories on Twitter where, is it Zoom bombed, where, you'd get random people coming in and ambushing Q&As and things like that. So we try to kind of get comfortable with talking in this way, because I think now we all do it, like we don't even think about it, but people get very self-conscious and trying to find out where the Zoom bit is where you can hide your own profile. That's been like a game changer for some people, so they don't have to stare at their face on screen. But within about 2 weeks we'd Bird's Eye View had started doing their first event, and then we just started to get things more regularly. And I think distributors kind of thought, well, we either release now digitally or we have to wait, and then it's that scrum of from, I think it was about July, August, cinemas open over here, and then you're fighting with everything else. So then we started doing things we did never, rarely, sometimes, always. We did the assistant. There seemed to be a fair few distributors that wanted to try something. So yeah, it was really good. And then we got to talk to Laura Mulvey as well when we were starting out. So that was really exciting. A lot of fangirling went on.
Well, that's fair. Well, actually, so, and then as soon as cinemas closed down again, you were entirely back online again, and
yeah, so we decided to do a hybrid as soon as cinemas opened back up. And the word that I think everybody is overused is pivot. I think so, like some organisations, you know, like QFT included, you know, being able to pivot to do something else was really valuable for us. And so obviously we had that initial time where we were working out how things would work for us in terms of online talks. And then when the cinemas opened back up, what we did find is, because there were health and safety protocols in place, that the idea of having someone there in person wasn't necessarily as appealing as it was pre-pandemic. So getting recorded content from directors or cast members or a panel of experts was another way to kind of help the cinemas eventize a screening and get people to come back in, because I think we'll all agree that everyone's really passionate, like audiences want to get back into the cinema, but they also want to feel safe as well. And I think giving them something a little bit extra for them to be able to come along and see a film with, certainly. And then because in London we went from being tier 2 to tier 3, a lot of cinemas closed quite quickly. And so whereas there were other cinemas around the UK that were still open, there was a case where we'd pre-recorded content that was meant to be going out on DCP to cinema screens, and we ended up putting it online instead, which meant audiences could see it from wherever they were, as long as they kind of had an internet connection.
Okay. Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, I have memories when you say that audiences want to be safe. I always remember some of the cinemas that I went into when I was a kid, like in the late 80s and early 90s. They weren't safe. But the QFT, in terms of as a 50-year-old venue and that sort of stuff, as marketing from the QFT's perspective, Ellen, has that been a challenge for you in terms of how you've done that this year?
There's definitely been a shift in our focus. So we similarly 2 weeks, I think. Well, the 3rd of April was our first thing on QFT Player. So we set up our Vimeo OTT really rapidly. But I think because we're so used to, with marketing in a cinema, that sort of weekly churn of new things coming in and trying to make sure that they get to the people that are interested in seeing them, it was a different pace. And we sort of looked more to how we could personalize the marketing that was going out to people, how we could bring what some of the team were thinking about, new releases or just sort of general film culture, as a way to sort of deepen the relationship with existing customers. So when they thought to watch a film, they would think of us, because we're not just competing with like a night out to a restaurant or anything like that. We're competing with the laundry, and we're competing with another episode of Schitt's Creek. Like there's so many things that you could be watching online. So it was very important that that our marketing really focused on our relationship with our audience as well, before we got into sort of telling them about all the great things that we had on QFT Player.
And did you find there's opportunities and more opportunities connecting with audiences in this way?
Yeah, well, I think it's difficult. I think at the start there was everybody was so hungry for, I don't know, to share that the nervous energy of all going into lockdown, and everybody was looking for ways to connect. I think as time has gone on, it's harder to maintain that sort of high energy and that high engagement. But I think it definitely made me focus again on, in particularly like when it comes to our social media, on how you make them social, so people feel like they have a relationship rather than it being purely a broadcast of what's happening.
Sure. And a very good GIF game, I have to say, Ellen.
Yes. Well, I can't take credit for all of it. A lot of the GIF game is Michael Delaney, who really knows his way around the GIFs.
And Jo, in terms of opportunities from a freelance perspective, it's more of an event marketing perspective. how have audiences responded in terms of their engagement, with Bird's Eye View?
They're incredibly well, and kind of echoing what Ellen was saying is, I think at the beginning there was this absolute hunger of like, this is weird, this is lockdown. I've never experienced this kind of deprivation of like stimulation or entertainment before. And I think, I think we all probably felt like it kind of coming out of the summer, being able to go and do things, and then kind of stuff happening again, and that in between phase, like you were fighting for people's attentions a bit more because more people had become savvy online. But I mean, for us, the audience engagement's been amazing, because we've had access to people that just by virtue of a distributor releasing a film in this country, they might not have been bringing talent over, or if they were, then it would only be in London and it'd be one Q&A and that would be it. Whereas we've had the opportunity to speak to people kind of all over the world, to talk to them about their films, and because we're using Facebook and YouTube, that's not geo-blocked, so anybody could be watching it. With Facebook, you can also cross-post, which we've done with the QFT. You can cross-post the live event, so it's not only one organisation that's kind of reaping the benefits. It then means that there's a bit of a dialogue happening with cinemas to their audiences as well. And I think when you've got the likes of Mullan, who are doing that, they do kind of the revenue share as well with their film. So if you watch a film on their player, then a certain amount will go back to the cinema. If you choose to watch it without cinema, there's kind of an opportunity to have, to engage with an audience, but also kind of, okay, it's not going to be the same as you having a screening in your own cinema, but that you can be talking to talk to your audience about something that's not just like, oh, how much do you miss cinema? It's like, film is still there, it's still thriving, it's just in a slightly different disguise, I suppose. And I think it's about us, it's about audiences adapting, but it's also about, I think, exhibitors and organisations and freelancers and, adapting the way people are consuming things as well. I mean, you've only got to look at Netflix to see like Bridgerton, and like the fact that people just went mental for it because it was something that was brand new, that obviously hit the mood of a nation. Like it's not, nothing's too serious. I haven't watched it yet, confession. So
I've watched an episode of it. It's all right.
It's very rude.
I watched all of it in quite a short period of time, but that is me with any TV series. It's like, if it's 10 episodes, it'll last maybe 2 days, 3.
See, I can't do binge. I can't binge on TV. I have to leave it like a week because I'm so traditional.
You're so old school.
I'm so very, very old school, Sarah, ridiculously so. But also, I sort of feel that most TV shows could be done in an hour and a half. Not entirely sure they need a full.
So they should all be films then? Is that what you're saying?
But not too long films.
No, I mean, you can still show them on TV. I'm not talking about the platform. But I think one of the things, just from a marketing perspective, and just before we move on to kind of advice and techniques and things like that, is what new audiences do you think you've reached? And have you got any insights into new engagement on Bird's Eye View platform, but also QFT player as well?
I know that Toki's been one of your guests. She's also the access manager for Bird's Eye View as well. And I think that's been a key thing for not just us, but for everybody. And I think with the latest film feel season that was back in the summer, some of the findings from their surveys were that there were people that, for whatever reason, couldn't normally get to the cinema, or an event wasn't accessible to them. We're actually saying this is brilliant. I've been able to consume a lot of kind of film, been able to like virtually attend events. There's been captioning, there's been provision for me basically. And I think that's been a big learning for Bird's Eye View, is that we make sure the majority of our live Q&As are live captioned, and where possible we'll have a BSL interpreter as well.
Right.
And then that obviously, sometimes that's dependent on the film as well. Like in order for for us to be able to do all of that, it's good if the film has all of the audio described and subtitles for deaf, hard of hearing. If they've got all of that, then it kind of feels stupid to let something fall down at the final hurdle. when a film is being made available digitally, that you then don't make any kind of value added content available to everyone as well. And just as I was kind of saying before, like being able to talk to talent that's across the world, we've had people tuning in from the US, from Germany, and from other countries within Europe as well, to see the Q&As we had. You know, we had Deborah Granick, I think it was late summer, and the figures for that were absolutely amazing. I think it was between kind of 14 or 16,000 people were reached for it, and there was just so much love for her, and it's just kind of quite heartwarming to see when audiences really do engage with that, because sometimes when you're sitting in a cinema and you've got the director there and you ask if anybody's got any questions, the tumbleweed goes across, and it's just like, it's people are slightly kind of nervous and shy. But I think with it being online, it also takes that level of kind of confidence, you know, not having confidence away.
There's less of a threshold anxiety for a lot of questions. Yeah. Ellen, what about from a venue's perspective? Have you noticed new engagements?
Yes, we don't have as much information about our new engagers, because quite a lot of the content that we get a lot of engagement with is the stuff that's free, and you don't have to really give any details to do that. But we know that we're getting people from the US, from Canada, from Sweden. We're getting people from all over the world tuning into the things that we have on QFT Player. But we're getting a really substantial amount of our existing audience as well is tuning in on to it. So it's good to see that they are sticking with us even when we go online.
Yeah, so they are leaping. Sorry, Sarah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to pick up on that in terms of, you know, we have noticed that, you know, from a QFT perspective, that the customers have been really loyal in terms of, you know, keeping in contact and donations. And, you know, I mean, it was evident when the cinema reopened that, you know, the signs were all good. There was a lot of sold out shows with obviously smaller capacities. So if I just wanted to see if you had any advice for maybe smaller exhibitors, kind of non-theatrical community cinemas who are starting to think now, how can they connect or reconnect with their audience after this time? Would you have any advice or any positive things to say about it?
The things that I would think about starting off with is thinking about what your goals are and what your brands are. So like what purpose you serve in your community. Are you a really social place? Like, is it not so much about, or well, it's obviously about the films, but you know, is it something where you want to welcome people in and have a conversation, and maybe you want to think about watch-alongs and things like that, which really eventize a screen viewing. But maybe you're more about sharing film history, or maybe you're more about, I don't know, getting people to try something new. So just thinking about what it is that you do when you exist in the real, well, this is the real world as well, but when people can come and see you, and think about, you know, how you can make that happen online, because it's so easy to see what somebody else is doing and just try to copy it. But if that's not what you do and that's not how you engage with your audience, then it'll not work as well. It won't
feel false. Authentic.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to think about that. And also I will say, when I'm thinking about goals, like online has been brilliant for engagement, and for us that was what was really important. It was having an ongoing relationship with our audiences, but it's not a huge money maker as it is currently. So if you're hoping to make big bucks from it, then it's worth sort of knowing that off the bat.
Yeah, it's about setting realistic expectations, isn't it? What do you want to get out of this? Nobody's going to retire any day soon from these.
That's my pension plan ruined there. Thank you very much.
And Jo, what about from your perspective in terms of advice for kind of smaller exhibitors?
Yeah, I think Ellen's kind of covered it, but I think especially with kind of community cinemas, you're probably a lot more, you're aware of your audience and who they are, perhaps a bit more so than like bigger exhibitors. And I think it's like looking at who they are, like what age are they, you know, doing a survey almost and saying, what do you use? Do you use Facebook? Do you use Twitter? Do you watch things on YouTube? Like, there's no point looking at something someone else has done and going, let's go and do that, if your audience aren't on those platforms or aren't watching those things or aren't going to be engaged. you know, it might be that you want to try something new, but I would always suggest going and having a look at how someone else has done it, because every kind of channel or platform has its limitations as well. And also, if you're kind of a bit cautious about wanting to try something, partner with someone that is doing it. So for example, with Bird's Eye View, if someone gets in touch with us and says, oh, I see that you've got a Q&A with, you know, next Tuesday on the 16th, we've got Kathy Yan, the director of Dead Pigs and Birds of Prey. If someone says, oh, we're going to be showing that in X amount of weeks as part of our program, could we have access to the Q&A? Could we cross post it to our page? Of course you can. Like, that's what we want to do, is we want to, you know, for Bird's Eye View, it's about promotion and celebration of films by women. So as far as we're concerned, it's great for us, and it's great for the film and the filmmaker if there's an extension of that as well. So I think, yeah, be realistic is the big thing. Like, find out what kind of appetite your audience have as well. And if you've got a slightly older audience, then for them not to necessarily be scared of the technology, and maybe it's at doing things where it's a bit of a workshop, saying like, this is how things work, you know. My mum's going to kill me for saying this, but you know, I nearly kind of, you know, got legally emancipated from both my parents trying to teach them how to use Zoom. Like,
we've all been there.
They are slightly technologically challenged. So, but you know, that, I think that's part of the thing, is that people feel there's a barrier. Oh, I don't know how it works, I can't do it. I know, just, I would say partnerships are invaluable. Like, don't be afraid to ask people. I think if anything, the pandemic has made everyone a little bit more open, a bit more kinder, and a bit more willing to share knowledge, because, well, we are hopefully going to be out of it sometime soon, but this time last year, that, you know, nobody knew what was really happening. And I think it's important to kind of all work together, because we're all going to learn it eventually, and if we can share best practices, then why not?
Well, speaking from, you know, from a network's perspective, you know, we would totally encourage that the, you know, the idea of kind of reaching out and finding information from people who, I mean, and one of the things about this sort of podcast series and these training webinars is that we're really, you know, everybody is very keen to help and to talk about their experience that they've had over the last year, you know. So hopefully, long may that continue.
Yeah, I think everybody's learned a lot, and when you have, you want to spread that around a bit. It's, everybody's been in it together. I would just also say that I fully agree with the partnerships. I think when we've come to finding new audiences with QFT Player, it's often through when we presented something in partnership with another organization, because there are people that engage with the cinema and they go, oh, what's on this week? I'll go and have a look, but they don't have a strong relationship with you necessarily, but they might have a relationship with, say, Outburst, the Queer Arts Festival. And so when we present something with them, they have that direct connection where you can talk to people in a different way.
I mean, I suppose from a venue's perspective, and also, you know, from Bird's Eye View, you know, it's that network of freelancers and talent and other organizations, other festivals that kind of build a strong platform for the audiences to feel kind of engaged with. I mean, I think there is a lot of what's the word, kind of cross-pollination of information that's coming from different places. You know, this is a good film, this is, you know, this might work online, this might work as a Q&A and all that sort of stuff. So that's been quite positive.
Yeah, and it does seem that there's more of a you know, a level playing field as well between different venues, and we've certainly found it here. Just everybody's kind of dealing with the same stuff, so there is that willingness to share the knowledge, as you say.
And I think, you know, there is a cost element involved in it, and I think it's about, like, you know, talking to other community cinemas. Is it something that you can kind of pull your resources together on? Obviously that creates kind of scheduling challenges, but you know, people do things via Zoom, via StreamYard, lots of different options to do it. And I think, you know, like, price could be a barrier, but obviously if there's funding available, brilliant, but also not being scared to kind of work with other people and partnerships. At Bird's Eye View, we just did a Q&A for Misbehaviour, and we worked with Holly at Film Bath and F-Rated, which meant a much wider audience could be a part of something rather than it just sitting with our audience. And it was really nice because we both got the same common goal as well. So yeah, partnerships absolutely vital and key.
Have you found Have you found that talent has made itself accessible because they have more time?
Yeah, I know. I'm smiling and laughing because, you know, back last March, it can be like, oh, their schedule's really busy, and it's like, busy doing what? Because you're not filming, you're not on your next project. But yes, everybody that we've worked with has been very up for doing things and been very available, and it's just been wonderful. And kind of the feedback that we've had from audience members, both kind of online and when we started to do the recorded content that was going into cinemas, was this would never happen in normal times, as it were. You know, I'd never get to see the director and the cast, and it's really nice that something's happening outside of London, or I'm feeling a part of it and I'm part of that audience. I don't think you can kind of get, you know, we shouldn't take anything away from the fact that that is audience engagement. We might not be able to measure it in the same way by handing someone out a survey, but they feel like they're part of something and part of a community still.
Okay. I mean, Ellen, there was one question about how it's been to market, you know, short films on the platform, which isn't something necessarily that, you know, QFT would have had the space for in terms of its in real life program. Have you found that sort of the diversity of the program has maybe liberated you a bit, or has brought challenges?
Yeah, it's one of the things that I sort of think about when we're thinking about the future of how it will work as well, is that online does really provide a lot of interesting opportunities for program. Exactly, shorts. We're a 2-screen cinema, so we don't really have the space often to show that, but some of our short films are the most popular ones on QFT Player. The one Becoming Cherry is like in our top 5, and it's just brilliant to see that those short films are getting another opportunity to be aired, because so often they're just in festivals and that's the only chance that you get to see them. And it's been really great to be able to show lots of short films and work with like Sunny Sisters to bring theirs as well to the player, which is great. And I think it involves you thinking a bit differently about how you market things. So I think it's very easy to get into the routine of marketing features that come with lots of trailers and lots of additional marketing material. But really, when you're talking about shorts, you're going with some brilliant images and a compelling story and hoping people give it a go.
We're going to finish on a bit of chat about long term. Where do we see this going? Of course, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, next week, next month. But Jo, I'll start off with you. What do you think the role of online screening will be kind of going forward? We seem to have jumped about 5 years, you know, in the space of a year, and it's exhausting to keep up, but all this is here now. So how do we, you know, what do you think long term in terms of hybrid delivery of programming, or what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. It feels like there's been some kind of accelerated process. I do some teaching, and all the students, all they want to write about is what's happening now. And I'm like, none of us know what's happening. So, and I think there's going to be a place. I think when we had that kind of, it's not the sweet spot, but when we had that summer autumn period where cinemas were open, Bird's Eye View was still doing stuff online, but we'd been doing something with Rocks. We were planning to do it in April last year. Obviously, cinemas closed down, didn't do it. Then it was September, so we were like, we're gonna support the film because we love the film. So we did recorded content that went out. I think we ended up putting it out online and in cinemas. We did a panel discussion with kind of various different speakers for Shirley as well, and also then did something online. And I think hybrid is going to be the way forward, because I think it's shown us, certainly, going back to the access provision, this is offering an opportunity to people that's not always available to them if they want to go and see the film in the cinema. But that's kind of also dependent on distributors wanting to put the film into independent exhibitors, not chasing after chains, so it has to observe that theatrical window as well. But I definitely think there's a place for it as well. And also, you know, Ellen was talking about short films. It's also an opportunity for those smaller films to just get to a wider audience. You know, as fantastic as those small independent films are from debut directors, they do get pushed out in a physical cinema space, and having an online space where there's a talk that's there in perpetuity, so someone can watch it whenever they want to, is something I think that's really special.
2 screens of QFT, and this, the QFT player that we've heard it called the third screen. What do you see the future? I mean, QFT player, we should say there's a whole podcast on QFT player and how it was set up with Michael Staley, and it was all turned around very quickly. Did you think then long term about it? Did you feel it where we be now? On what do you think long term for it?
I think, well, I have been having conversations about online players for the last few years as a sort of like, in the future, wouldn't it be brilliant to have an online player? And then all of a sudden it happened within the space of 2 weeks. But I think that they will be there. And I think Michael does also think of it as well as that sort of screen 3 where you have space to put stuff that you couldn't put in the cinema for various reasons, or to continue something on if it can only serve, if it only has space in the cinema for 2 weeks, maybe it can go online depending on release windows. And so you can grow the audiences for those niche titles, which I think is a really exciting opportunity. And also, I think in terms of accessibility, it's really important. We're working on trying to get some more captions for the things on QFT Player at the minute. And I think as well, because so much about how accessible a venue is, there's the sort of mental barrier of going somewhere and not knowing if it's for you. And if you can have that relationship online, maybe that progresses to an in-person relationship. But if it doesn't, then it's still a very important relationship that you continue to have online. There will always be people who, for whatever reason, are unable to go to the cinema. So if you can bring cinema to them, then online is a great way to do that.
Can I ask a quick question? And this is thinking of all people like you who have worked in marketing departments and stuff like that. You're very often quite small in size in terms of the amount of people who are working within the marketing. If, say, a hybrid is developed and hybrid approach is the future, is that going to put more pressure on marketing departments so you're selling a shop and you're selling an online shop at the same time? There's a sort of you're going to be expected to kind of cover both kinds of. Do you know what I mean? Is that going to put pressure?
Well, I guess there are more products in a sense to sell if you've got the in-person one, but I don't think that they ever need to compete, and I think that they can exist side by side. It probably will be an increased workload, but maybe there are ways to get around that and share that around a bit more.
Jo, what do you think for freelancers? Is that going to put extra pressure on them in terms of having to come up with 2 strategies, one online and one in real life?
I think kind of to a certain extent, I think it's adapting and it's being flexible. I was working on County Lines, and that was meant to be out April last year. Then it was September, then it was November, and then I think it ended up being the 1st of December. And the decision was then finally made that if the cinema was open in that city, it would play, but if not, it was going to be going online. And I think it's just about being consistent in the messaging. So I think it's, you see it now, it's kind of in cinemas and on digital, on demand, or watch at home. And, you've got the likes of Curzon, who have bricks and mortar cinemas, but also have Curzon Home Cinema. They have, I think they have got different, marketing teams for both parts of it. I think Ellen's right, like they can coexist in an ecosystem. It's just sometimes figuring out how they support one another. So, if, say when it was Faces Places with Agnes Varda, there was a season of Agnes Varda films on Curzon Home Cinema. So there are opportunities there. But I think in terms of freelancers, it's just understanding, I think, what a distributor's expectations are as well, and what's kind of realistic. In the current situation we're in, with County Lines, it had to kind of pivot from going from saying in cinemas and online to some of the cities where I had people doing work in them being an online message. But I think freelancers by nature are very flexible and adaptable people. So if something changes, they'll just go, okay, that's fine. We'll kind of roll with the punches and we'll go with it. I think, there's obviously a danger that the workload becomes so immense because you've got X amount of virtual Q&As and then stuff's happening in the cinema as well. And I think it's about what the appetite is. It's not cannibalizing your audience. If you know that there's a bigger film coming up, I suppose, that is going to get people going back into the cinemas, then I think there's probably going to be more of an appetite to have recorded content or something like that around it. So we were saying before, if you've got a smaller film that's maybe foreign language or by a debut director, it might be served better online, because ultimately, if you ask a filmmaker what they want from their film, they say, I want as many people to see it as possible. So for them, that psychologically, they want it to be in a cinema, they want the screen, they want the curtains coming back,
and the
but
value.
actually you'll get a bigger audience if things are online. Some of the viewing figures that we've had for Q&As have been fantastic, and we would have never, you wouldn't have achieved those within cinemas. We love cinemas and they're such an important part of film culture, but I think everyone's just got to start to appreciate that there is a space for kind of online film curation, and we need to kind of work through it together as we have been doing in the past year.
I suppose it's just managing that quality of engagement, and I suppose from a marketer's point of view, that's something that you'll have to sort of roll into future planning and things like that. What level of engagement are you getting, and how deep that is, and what kind of relationships that's going to create with a film or with a venue and stuff. That's going to be quite a challenge, but doable, though. All doable.
Yeah, I think it's what do you class as meaningful engagement? We're all aware of surveys that have to happen on funded projects or funded films, and they were being done in person pre-pandemic, and now that's not really necessarily an option. So it's like QR codes, but how do you get the follow through with that? So there has to kind of be a bit of a reconciling of how we're going to measure what is the success of an online event or an online film screening. As I said before, no one's going to retire from doing things online, but is it more about kind of the holistic approach of nurturing a film audience than kind of box office, which is a very kind of arty thing to say, but
blimey,
I like it. Don't sound like a marketer there at all.
Quite dangerous revolutionary talk there, Jo. Sarah, did you have any final questions at all?
No, I just think it's great to hear from both of you. I think the more ways that we can connect with audiences through whatever medium that is that suits the particular time we're in, the better. And it's been really good to hear from both of you about how you've managed that and managed it very successfully. That
you're sort of taking the challenges of it seriously as well. So we're both very grateful for your time today, and we'll hear from you again, I'm sure, and hope to see you in real life at some stage, if everything goes according to plan.
Eventually.
Thank you.
All right, thanks very much both.
Thanks guys.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.